just either a slightly different from what they are, or we talk, we see things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. If you've seen something strange, something unusual, a cryptid, ghost, UFO, and you'd like to share your story, you can email us, strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. I want to thank Alistair Wood for sending a bunch of comics and badges, pins, keychains, and stickers. Really, really cool stuff. He's a really excellent artist. His comics work is amazing. Absolutely love it. He sent some horror comics and a book of his artwork and so forth, one of his prints. Really, really cool stuff. And he sent a bunch of badges, pins, and keychains and stickers. They're kind of riffs on David Bowie and classic monsters and things like that. And Allison and Ursula just absolutely fell in love with them. You can find Alistair's artwork and these badges and so forth at his website. It's www.woodi.uk. That's WOOD, the letter I.UK. I also want to thank Michael C. for the PayPal donation. Thank you very much. And I want to mention once again the Strange Familiars zipper hoodies. This is probably your last chance if you want to get one. If you can pay by PayPal, there's still time. We'll be placing the order over the weekend, and we're only ordering those sweatshirts that people have paid for up front. So there's still time if you want to get one. You're going to have to pay by PayPal, though, because there's no time to send a check or money order. But if you want one, contact me via email. Again, that's strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. And just a reminder, I will be at the Metaphysical and Paranormal Expo in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, this Saturday, June 8th, from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. I will have copies of my books there. I'll be signing and selling those, prints of my artwork, Strange Familiar stuff, and more. So stop by and see me if you're in the area, and tell me a spooky story if you want. That's at the Wyndham Hotel in Gettysburg. This past Sunday I went on site to the White Rocks Trail near Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania with Chad. Chad and I retraced the hike he did with a friend in 2014, which turned out to be a very strange and unsettling day on the trail for him and his friend. This is a different White Rocks than the White Rocks area of Michaud Forest, which was featured in the Michaud Roar episode of Strange Familiars. However, the two stories and the recordings I made at both locations share some interesting commonalities, as you'll hear later in the episode. And you'll also hear Chad explain the White Rocks Trail, which is not really a part of Michaud, is part of the same mountain range, and both regions are connected by the Appalachian Trail. At some point in the episode, you'll hear me mention the Tuckahoe Monster. I had never been to Camp Tuckahoe, but it is, as Chad relates, less than a mile from the White Rocks Trail, where we were. The Tuckahoe Monster is a bit of local folklore I collected a few years ago. There's not much to the story as I heard it, only that campers had reported seeing an 8-foot-tall, hair-covered monster in that area in years past. So this episode is comprised almost entirely of on-site recordings. As with every on-site recording, the sound levels are a bit inconsistent. That's just the nature of on-site recordings, but I've done my best to even out the levels throughout. At point you'll hear us breathing heavy, and that's because we were climbing a mountain. So I was a little winded in places, but it was a great hike, a beautiful day, and I want to thank Chad for taking me out there and telling his story. So, what's this trail again?
This is White Rocks Trail, located here in Cumberland County. It's off of Coon Road, which is off of Creek Road, which is off of Route 74, and we're slightly south of the Yellow Breeches Creek. So the nearest town is Boiling Springs, PA, which is famous for its springs, and it's also a Appalachian community.
A friend who built violins there's this violin building school there.
Is there?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's something I did not know.
He came from Georgia, stayed in Bowling Springs, learned how to build fiddles.
That's pretty cool. I like that. The AT also runs right through Boiling Springs.
So we're talking with Chad, who had a very weird day out here. He said it was 2014?
2014.
And it was very similar weather-wise. It was overcast, and he came out to hike this trail with a friend. We'll talk about the rest of what happened as we go, because we're actually doing the same hike today.
Yes. The White Rocks Trail is a side trail off of the AT. And there are a lot of side trails off the AT. If you think of the Appalachian Trail as a spine, there's all these little trails that come off of it. And usually they go to interesting places or overlooks. This one, I'd say the biggest draw for this is the White Rock Formations, which are at the top of the ridge. There's all these large white quartzite formations, which obviously give the trail its name. And they're all along the top of the ridge, like spines. If you think of a stegosaurus, that's pretty much what these things look like. Like I said, I picked this one for my friend because I know it well, do this trail a lot, and I figured it would be a nice place to get his feet wet and actually be more of a hike versus a stroll.
A stroll in the woods, yeah.
Yeah, stroll in the woods. So we made our way up the mountain, which is what we're doing right now. And this trail goes somewhat straight and then starts switchbacking up. Like Tim had said, the weather was similar to today. We had storms 2 or 3 days before then, and it was overcast, and it was a Friday, and it was in April, so there was some vegetation, but the trees haven't had leaves yet. Mostly just undergrowth. Just to let you know, I've heard that there are rattlesnakes up here, but I haven't run into them.
Alright, well that's what walking sticks are for.
Yes, well I'm just letting you know, so you know offhand. And you know what the old timers used to do to the rattlesnakes? You know how they used to get rid of them?
Tell me, I'm listening.
So what they used to do was, I don't know if a lot of people know, but the only rattlesnake endemic to Pennsylvania is the timber rattler. A little small screen here. Spring. And during the winter, they den up in the large dens. So when you think of the classic snake pit, that's what rattlers do. So what the old timers would do, this way, is they would find their dens during the winter, because timber rattlers don't travel very far. They like to stay near their burrows and their sources of food. They'd find their dens during the winter, and then they would dynamite them.
Oh, jeez.
And that's how they would get rid of the snakes.
That'll do it.
That will do it. So, henceforth, why timber rattlers are considered endangered here. Though in some places they're as common as bees or something. So you're going to have one side of the mountain there be nothing but timber rattlers, and on the other side, none at all, because they don't travel very far. So this terrain has already changed within last year. So this didn't exist.
All that.
Yeah. So
we're looking at basically a pool in the middle of the trail.
Yeah. There is no water sources up here except for maybe these little springs that pop out.
So the creek runs through the valley, basically.
Yes.
And we're going away from the creek.
We're going away from the creek. There are some, according to the maps I looked at, there is some wetland down that way towards the base of the mountain. I've never gone down there. Most of the animal movement I've seen is usually they'll move up to the side and they'll head that way down towards where it's thicker and where the swamps and all that are down there. Just to give you an idea. Though in the winter I was up here, last time I was up here it was March.
Nice.
This area was full of deer tracks. So I was up here in the snow. And terrain is, rocky, typical Pennsylvania trails. AT hikers call Pennsylvania Rock Sylvania.
Shoe killer.
Yes, the shoe killer, where hiking boots go to die. So at this point, me and my friend were just cruising along. It was about 7, 8 in the morning. We were the only car parked at that parking spot at the trailhead. There was nobody else here. And we were still kind of working along here, slowly up the mountain. The slope here isn't bad. It slopes up gradually, and then once you reach the shoulders of the ridge, it kind of gets a little steep. But nothing, if you don't take your time, you can't handle.
I imagine I'll be a lot more winded when we get to the switchbacks.
It's only about maybe 3 or 4 switchbacks.
Oh, that ain't bad.
This isn't a terrible hike. Once you get up to the top, you run. Basically, the trail, once you get to the top, runs along the ridge line where the white rock formations are, and it joins with the AT at a hill called Center Point Knob, and that used to be the old halfway point for the AT. The AT's been rerouted a number of times, so there's still the monument up here, but this is no longer the halfway point. The halfway point now is in Pine Grove Furnace State Park,
which is part of Michaud.
Yep, part of Michaud. Just to say this, these are the same mountain range. This mountain is the same mountain range as Michaud. This is the northern end of the South Mountain Range. So we are actually literally on the end of that mountain range, the tip. So now here, we're starting to ascend the mountain. And it was about here, me and my friends started to smell smoke. A guy had come down, one person passed us. And I assumed he lived in houses locally, and he was just hiking the trail. Didn't have any water or anything with him, so I'm assuming he was local. And we started smelling smoke. And I could see a small pale, as if ground fog, but it was most definitely smoke. So, and I'm like, what is that? And I was shocked that the guy that came down through here didn't even notice it or didn't care.
Or mention it.
Or mention it. And we were trying to figure out what was going on. So we decided just to keep going, because right away I'm thinking of the safety of the houses that are on the other edge of the mountain here.
Sure, yeah.
And, last thing we need is a wildfire. So I'm going to take point here, okay?
Yes,
is that all right?
Yeah.
Or you still need me closer for audio?
No, you're good.
Okay. And then now we're starting to go off the switchbacks here a little bit. All right. Yeah, this is it.
This stump right here?
Yep, this stump right here.
All right, 1 second.
You can still see the scorch.
So it had been hit by lightning or something?
Yes. So we just got up here to the stump. We're on the side of the mountain. Me and my friend found the source of the smoke. So what it was, there was a tree that must have been struck by lightning. There was a good stiff wind coming from the mountain down into the valley. What had happened is, as it got struck by lightning, the tree was smoldering, the bark was smoldering on the tree, and it had traveled up the tree and up into the wind. So at the top of the tree, it was burning, and there was pieces of burning bark falling into the undergrowth. So we were kind of like trying to figure out what we were going to do. We're like, should we keep going? Should we call the fire department? And I kind of made the executive decision that we were going to call the fire department. So we tried to call, and of course there's no signal here. That's how it always is. I went down a little bit, just kind of down the trail about 200 yards. I got some signal, got the fire department, told them what was going on. They asked me if I could stay up the tree, and they said that when they got here they would send somebody up. And I said if I heard the sirens, I would come back down the trailhead and meet the people and bring them up, you know, because there's no way you can get a fire truck up here. You know, it's a narrow trail on the mountainside. So we waited a while, and we just kind of kept moving stuff and kept it from burning. And I heard the sirens down in the valley, so I asked my friend, I said, look, are you okay staying here? Now, you got to remember, this is a gentleman who, you know, he knows what some of the local animals look like, and he knows, you know, some things. You know, he's not a woodsman like I am. You know, we decided that I was going to go down the trail because I was better, I was quicker and faster at hiking. I basically left my pack here with him, and I started going down the trail to meet the firemen and bring them up to where this was, because if you don't know where this is, you won't find it. So anyways, he was probably sitting on this rock or waiting right here, and I went down. So the trail goes down here and then kind of turns. And on that part, Tim, you know where it was flat? Mm-hmm. I hadn't quite reached, you know, before we make the turn to come up the switchback. Before I made the turn, or when I was on the flat area down there, before I even got to the trailhead, I heard somebody running. I'm like, who the heck's that? Turn around, here was my friend. And I said, you know, well, what are you doing? He said
he was running down this.
He was running down the trail. I mean, okay, he was not.
That's not an easy trail to run.
No. This guy was running as fast as he could possibly go. And like I said, I was on the flat area right below the switchback. And I said, he was terrified, absolutely terrified out of his mind. I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he's like, man, he goes, I saw something. I said, whoa, back up. I said, look. What's wrong? You know, because me, I'm not scared of the woods. I spend a lot of time in the woods. I camp out in all weather, all seasons. And I'm an experienced hiker and woodsman. He's like, I saw something go up the mountain. And I said, well, what did you see? And he's like, well, I yelled for you and you didn't come. And I said, well, I didn't hear you. You know, I couldn't hear him. So, and even though I was right down there, I couldn't hear him. I don't know why. I don't know if the wind was blowing that day. Now, when it was blowing, it wasn't blowing enough to like really move the trees. It was just kind of a nice stiff breeze, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a heavy wind. I said, well, I didn't hear you, and I think it's because of where I was positioned. Well, he said he was standing right here, looking through this area. Now, you got to remember, at that time, the only undergrowth was the blueberry scrub. There was none of these leaves because it was early spring. The trees were only in buds. He said he had seen an animal or something come up the mountain and just walk right by him. And I said, was it running? Was it, you know? He said, no. He said it just kind of walked leisurely up the mountain. And I said, well, what did it do when you yelled? And he goes, when I yelled, it didn't even pay attention to me. It had no fear at all. No fear, just kept doing what it was doing. And I said, well, what was it doing? He's like, it just walked up the mountain. And I said, well, when you yelled, did it run? Or did, because deer, if you yell, will run away from you. So I said to him, describe it. What did it look like? Did you see it? I said, you sure it wasn't a deer? And he goes, no, I know what a deer looks like. I know what a deer does. They run when they see you. They bound. He goes, this thing didn't bound. It just was ambling up the mountain. I said, well, was it 4 legs or 2 legs? Jokingly. He said, well, it was on 4 legs. I'm like, okay. I said, well, about how tall was it? He said, about the shoulder height of a deer. So I'm guessing, 4 feet to 5 feet. I said, did you see a head? He goes, no. I just saw a set of shoulders and a back end. And I said, well, how fast was it going? He said, it just slowly walked up the mountain. Then I said, well, what color was it? I said, was it reddish brown? Because I'm thinking of deer, and I'm still thinking of deer. And he's like, no, it wasn't reddish brown. I said, well, was it black? Because my next thought was black bear. Mm-hmm. And there are black bear that do come into this area. They up the road, they had a 700-pound black bear hit by a car, and that's a big bear.
That's a big bear.
That's a very big bear.
Yeah, for this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm thinking black bear. I'm like, well, was it black? He said, no, it wasn't black. So my next thing, I'm thinking, okay, there are 3 phases of black bear. I said,
get your the cinnamon,
and a golden bear, like a honey bear. Mm-hmm. He said it wasn't light brown. He said it was almost like a a yellowish brown, like a golden color. So I'm thinking golden bear. You know, that's very, 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 very rare. That is the rarest color phase of the black bear. And I said, well, when you yelled, did it run? Did it do anything? He said, no, it didn't even stop. He said it just kind of ambled up the mountain, had no care in the world, didn't care if I was there, didn't give a squat, which makes no sense to me, because if a black bear hears you, they run. Mm-hmm. They bolt. So what really confused me was I was down below, and we had just come up to this area, and you know, you could at the time see pretty far in. And by his estimation, I asked him, you know, how far was this thing from him? So, standing where I am here, if you want to look straight through here, you see the tree straight in front of me?
Yes.
That's where it was.
Oh, that close?
That close.
Okay, so
30 yards, less than 100 yards away. That's how close.
I mean,
it was.
I'd put that less than 100.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the same tree.
Maybe 50.
Yeah.
50.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll walk out there if you want me to. But, and like I said, there were no, you can see the undergrowth isn't real thick there. You want me to walk out there?
Finish your story.
Okay. That's how close it was. And he was terrified. He goes, I've never seen anything like that. You know, and this guy hunted. I was just like, I don't know what to tell you, man. He's like, well, I'm not going back up there. And I said, well, I don't, you know, what about the tree? He's like, no. He's like, I'm not going back up there. I'm walking back down with you.
Wow.
He goes, he said he saw this thing on moving, and he didn't see like a neck, which I don't know how you couldn't have seen a neck. Mm-hmm. He said he just saw what looked like something on all fours just slowly ambling its way through. I said, well, was it making a ton of noise? He said, no. It was quiet. It was moving quietly. He said he heard, you know, a couple little crunches, but nothing super loud. So whatever it was very stealthy. And what I didn't get is we had just come up this way. And you know how the trail runs. It kind of comes up and then switches over here. I didn't see it or hear anything.
Yeah, it almost... Either you scared it up without seeing it.
Which is a possibility.
Or it crossed right behind you.
Or it was sitting there waiting. It saw us coming up and started moving up. And then because the switch backs up,
right,
it was sitting in there watching us the whole time.
Yeah, one way or another, it had to be, if not there, very nearby when you walked down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I didn't even hear this thing moving up the mountain. And, you know, I'm very attuned to what's going on around me. I'm constantly looking for deer and animals. It's what I do. It's one reason.
So you said this fellow hunted and stuff?
Yeah.
And whatever this was freaked him out enough where he said...
He said he was scared. He said he just felt a total feeling of absolute fear.
Wow. Yeah.
It overtook him enough that he literally ran down. And this guy...
See, and bear don't do that.
No. They run from you.
Yeah, but, I mean, they don't generally... Like, people are like, wow, I saw a bear. But unless it's an aggressive encounter, people do not usually have that kind of fear response with a bear, you know?
No. Usually you're like, oh, my God. You know, usually, you know...
A lot of people are like, oh, I got so lucky, I saw a bear.
Yeah.
Because an aggressive encounter with a bear is a very rare thing.
If a black bear is coming towards you, and then you start... What you generally do with a black bear, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, you don't play dead.
That's grizzlies.
That's grizzlies. So you must know what I'm going to say here. But most black bears, you make yourself look as big as possible, and you yell, because they don't have good eyesight. They can't see. They have great sense of smell and good hearing. So if you yell, 9 times out of the 10, they'll hear you, and they take off. Now, if a black bear is coming towards you, you better be ready to fight for your life, because they're going to predate on you.
Yeah,
that bear is looking to eat you or eat something that you have.
You're not going to outrun it. You're not going to climb a tree.
No.
Yeah,
you get ready.
Yeah,
you get ready.
It's a stand and fight situation with a black bear.
Like I said, this guy hunted, but he never hiked a lot. And I was just trying, you know, he's like, something I really want to do. I want to get in better shape, because he wanted to go further hunting, because he was tired of just hunting like right off from the truck.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, he came down. He was terrified. He wouldn't go back up. I said, okay, just stay with me now. So we walked down and we ran into the firefighter that was coming up. We brought him back up here to the tree, and I saw or heard nothing. I only had what he told me. And like I said, it was in color. You know, he said it was furry. I said, what did the fur look like? And he said it wasn't sleek like a deer. It was shaggy. You know, shaggy. You know, thick fur. That's the best way to describe it. Like a bear. So, you know, right away I'm thinking bear. But he said, no, Chad. He said, this wasn't a bear. He said it couldn't have been. And he's hunted upstate. He's seen black bear.
And it sounds like he was kind of hesitant to say exactly.
Yeah,
one way or
he didn't know
another.
what it was.
Yeah,
it was freaked him out enough that he ran. And I asked him about smells or anything like that. Because some animal, I've actually smelled deer that stink from being in swamps. And
coyotes will stink sometimes.
Yeah, and whatever it was, he didn't know what it was, and he said it was going straight up the mountain without a care in the world, and it was just walking up the mountain. Didn't care. He said it was ambling up the mountain. That's his exact words. So anyways, he brought the fire back up here, and then I said, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep going? Because he was visibly shook up. And me, I wanted to find out what it was. I was curious. And he's like, yeah, I guess we'll keep going. So we continued along the trail.
So the firefighter stayed here, obviously, to deal with the tree.
Yes, he stayed here. He told me they were he was in contact with the truck on his radio, and said they were bringing a UTV up to cut the tree down. And I don't know if you took any pictures or not, but the tree, how I can always identify this tree is because it was cut down. And as you can see, there aren't a lot of cut down trees other than the ones that have fallen across the trail.
Yeah, there's some that are rotten and fallen.
Yeah, there's no cut stumps like this, and the scorch.
Yeah, you can tell because there's a burn there.
And this has been, and you could see.
And this was what was smoking when you came up, basically. The
top of the tree was smoking. And this is what was smoking. And this whole area was full of smoke. Out there was no smoke. And I even walked out there and I said, how close was this thing? And I walked through the woods and he said, right there. And he stopped me like right in front of that tree. I looked for tracks. I saw none.
Yeah, it'd be hard to see any
But
tracks
in this area.
Yeah, it's detritus, basically dead leaves.
Yeah,
everywhere.
Dead leaves, undergrowth, and rocks. It's not going to leave much of anything.
Yeah, no, you'd have to get lucky enough for something to step right in the mud.
Right, and there was no mud that day.
Yeah.
And like I said, you could still see some of the pieces of bark that had fallen off. This is what was falling off, and it was smoldering. And my concern was the undergrowth.
Yeah, sure.
Catching fire. If you can see, this is like aching to be burnt. Pennsylvania at that time has burn bans for good reason. So. Right here is like another trail that comes straight down. But they don't want you to get on that anymore.
Oh, okay.
They're reforesting that. Basically, you'll have this switch back and then one more, and then straight up to the ridge. Okay? Like a short climb up to the ridge.
It's not too bad.
Yeah. And here you can see how the land goes like this. That was that bubble I was telling you about. See that?
Yeah.
So you could sit in there conceivably, and nobody would see you.
Yeah.
It's like a little trough in there, like a little lake.
And whatever it was, did not use the trail. It made its own way up.
Which shocked me, because that goes against everything. It's all about caloric intake and caloric saving calories. So an animal will use the same trails we do because it's easier. Unless it's like a game trail. Like you get these, this is a game trail.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So they travel established trails because they want to save calories. It's all about intake. And a large animal has to be eating either large meals or just constantly intaking as it's going. And bears is the reason why they're omnivores. They're the largest animal in Pennsylvania.
Supposed to be anyway.
It's supposed to be, yes. They have to take in, them being omnivores, that lets them take advantage of any food source. You see how this tree is?
Torn up, yeah.
That's how that tree was. So imagine all this bark laying down, smoldering. That's what that was like 4 years ago. Or 5 years ago, I should say. So that just gives you an idea. It was a dead standing tree that had been struck by lightning and caught fire. And it was just like this. Except it was a little more intact. You saw that one laying on the ground was more solid, but the bark had splintered off and was just smoldering all around. As we made our way up here, we could hear those guys firemen down there. And we were just slowly, this is the second switchback, and we were making our way along here. And at this time I'm asking him, hey, asking him questions. With me, I'm curious.
Right, yeah.
I like to know what I see out here, and I like to have answers. So I'm one of those guys that if I see something weird or something that happens, I'm not happy till I have an explanation. If that makes sense. This is that trail I showed you.
The old one, okay.
So just to give you an idea of our position, slightly to the left is where that tree, the burn tree is.
From here, yeah.
From here.
Down that trail.
So where that thing came from, I think that was in between here. I have to look at it again when we get back down there, but just to give you an idea. So it came up this way, if that makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah. So it was over here, just to give you an idea. So you see it opens up there.
Yeah. Now we could, wouldn't be a fun hike, but we could go up that way if we wanted to. It's not so thick where we couldn't do it.
No, it's plausible to do it.
Yeah.
But I'll just kind of give you an idea of where we're at.
Right.
Okay? Because that becomes important later on. So up here is the ridge. We're all but there. And you always tell the ridge because it gets more rocky. So be careful here. I don't want you to slip.
Yeah.
So this is what this whole ridge is made of.
White rocks.
White quartzite. There are some other igneous rocks. As you get towards the end, there's more iron deposits. There's some here, but not a lot. Here's one.
Yep.
And that's why I asked you the question I asked you.
Yes. Well, it holds true, at least in York County, where there's quartz. There's weird stuff going on, but
so this is the ridge. This is White Rocks Trail. That down there is a shelf valley, so that valley is higher than the valley down there.
okay.
And you can't see it here, but there's another mountain across there, and I've dropped down in that ridge and I've explored that region. And Camp Tuckahoe is on the other side of the other mountain.
Which, as I was mentioning on it right up here, there is, in local folklore, something called the Tuckahoe Monster.
Which you'll have to explain that to me later.
It's just a big hairy monster.
Well, guess what? We're near there.
Yeah. About how far is that from?
Less than a mile.
Less than a mile, like as the crow flies.
As the crow flies.
Yeah.
Because you drop down the valley, you get on the top of that mountain, you're literally above Camp Tuckahoe.
Oh, there you go.
And there's and I knew I was on Camp Tuckahoe because there's actually signs that tell you that. And just for your information, I've never been there, but the highest point in York County is on that mountain top.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
That's cool. I would have guessed it was at the ski resort.
I would have guessed no. It's actually higher in sea level.
Yeah.
That is the highest spot on there. There's people that have actually gone and found it, and it's marked somehow. I want to go do that because I'd like to find that. I actually thought it was the Pigeon Hills. And here's something you might find interesting. I'm going to change the subject a little bit here.
That's fine.
The Pigeon Hills geologically is the same as the Howling Hills. They are different geologically than all the other land around them. So for some reason, they are the same as the Howling Hills.
That's very interesting. Very, very interesting.
So I thought you might find that interesting.
Yeah, well, Pigeon Hills, I know has a good bit of UFO sightings up there.
And just so you know that the Pigeon Hills is not named for passenger pigeons like some people think. If you go back in history of York County, there was a guy who, with the last name of Pigeon, he was the guy that he surveyed that area. And that's why they're named the Pigeon Hills. So at this point, we were at the ridge top, back to the original story. And this is when we heard the saws from the firefighters down below us. So there were people, and like I said, based on that other straight up trail, this would be almost right in line with where
whatever it was
headed. Came up, or in line with the Stump. So whatever it was came up was probably between here, between here and there almost, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And we heard all the saws, and we heard guys talking, and we heard the tree drop. And what they basically did is they cut the tree down, soaked it down, and then we heard the UTV go back down. I would say in time, it was probably close to 10, maybe 10-ish, somewhere around there.
In the morning.
In the morning. Like I said, we got here, I would say around 7-ish. And because I was trying, to beat the storms that were coming in the afternoon.
So by the time you were done with the firemen and stuff.
It was 3 hours. It was 3 hours. And like I said, up to this point, the only person we had seen was the guy that we saw descend the trail past us when we were heading towards the burnt up tree where the fire was. Up here on the ridge, there was no smoke because, like I said, it had passed down. It was passing down the trail. The wind was actually following kind of the trail, so whatever that my friends saw, there was no smoke in that area. It was all kind of down below us from where the tree was, because like I said, the wind was blowing. It was a gentle, stiff breeze. It was gentle enough that, there wasn't like, but it was enough that it kept that fire going. I'm assuming if it would have been more blustery, we would have really had a problem.
With the fire.
With the fire.
Yeah.
So we kind of stopped and paused, had something to drink, maybe to get a little food, and we listened to the firefighters do their own thing, and then we heard the UTV go down the trail. And like I said, we didn't hear anything else. We hadn't run into a soul. It was just like this, quiet. And the whole day just started. And I just, you ever had one of those days where you wake up and just, it's like an odd day?
Yep.
And that's how this day started. And I'm like, okay, we're done with that fire thing. Let's just keep going. And, and the whole time, as I'm walking and talking to my friend, I'm looking around, trying to find out what we saw. I'm looking for this, whatever it was. And at this time, I'm looking for a bear. I'm still looking for a bear.
Sure, yeah.
That's what I was.
Well, that makes the most sense, given the information you had.
Yes. And you can tell it's not a huge park trail. As I described to you, it's a ridge, but it's not like
it's
a
not
precipice.
Yeah.
We're not going to fall to our death.
No. There's a couple. Like I said, there's a couple where I get a little weak in the knees because I'm worried about balance issues as I'm doing them. But this is fine.
And here you can see the deer use this area right here the most. That's probably the lowest area in the ridge. And you can tell by just looking at the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've heard turkey down in through here. And most of the animals I hear and see, if we run into deer, they run into this direction.
Yeah.
So, and then like I said, the whole time we're moving along this, I'm looking, I'm trying to figure out what we saw. And you didn't have the tree branches. You only had a little bit of the undergrowth. And you can see it's not like thick undergrowth.
No. This is, northeast mountain kind of terrain. It's
blueberry scrub is what it basically is.
Yeah.
With sassafras trees. We're working our way through here. And still not hearing anything or seeing anything. And I'm starting to say to my friend, you sure you didn't see deer? Are you sure, you sure it wasn't, something And he swore to God, he was swearing to God. He said, Chad, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And he said, and I've never seen anything move like that in my life. And I said, yeah, you were scared silly. And this isn't like a guy that's scared real easily. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he was a Marine, and he wasn't, You know, he's done stuff, you know, and it's not like he's, you know, scared of stuff. I'll know when we hit the halfway point, because the high point of the trail splits, and you can either go up to the top of the summit because there's a high point, or you can go around it. I think for today we'll just go around it,
right.
Maybe hit, because it's not important
to
this, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Walking stick is essential. Like, I often tell people, like, you hike and you don't take a walking stick with you.
You're asking for problems.
Yeah.
Because honestly, this is your first line of defense.
Absolutely. I know that from my experience.
And
you get through some reach.
yeah. This is why I do this trail.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Ain't it? That's
So we're looking at just a huge boulder formation. I guess left here by a receding glacier, I'm guessing.
I'm thinking what happened is the mountain's made of this, and it's like a 30 snowball, and it eroded away.
It could be that too.
Yeah. And every time I come up here, the formations change. They crack.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
And you can tell this one on the right side here has cracked just recently, because there's no moss or lichen or anything on it.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up here, I think, is the high spot. And we're about roughly halfway through the ridge. At this time then, me and my buddy are just, you know, the adventure's over. And, you know, I let him go because he was starting to get annoyed.
Wait, you mean asking questions?
Yes, I stopped asking him questions. And we're just, you know, talking and enjoying the hike. And the whole time, you know, there was never a feeling of dread. You know, when I said it was an odd day, there was never a feeling of dread. It was just a feeling of oddness, if that makes any sense. Strangeness, oddness. I don't know if you ever had a day like that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and, you know, he was calmed down by it at this point. You know, he was, like I said, visibly shaken. And he was calmed down at this point. And he's just like, wow, this is cool, because, you know, he was enjoying the rock formations. You know, now this is the highest point right here, and you can see the trail splits, and you go up to the top and it's flat up there, or you can walk along the shelf here. A lot of local rock climbers come up here. I've gone up that and seen rappelling ropes, and they were belaying. They were belaying down on the other side.
Oh wow!
Which is a little taller and a little more rougher. Always like this area. This is about the center of the ridge. And still, you know, nobody. Because, you know, it's a Friday morning.
Yeah.
Most people were at work. It was April. Most of the AT or through hikers weren't out yet. It was calling for rain. And we had the place to ourselves. We did eventually run into two other hikers near the end of the ridge, and they were coming the other direction. So they had parked at Boiling Springs, which is northwest of here, and they had come in from the AT. They were headed south from the AT, and they were coming in from the AT, which is the other end of this trail, and they were going to do the loop. They were going to walk back down the road back to Boiling Springs, which is a total distance, I think, about 7 miles. So just to kind of give you an idea how this ridge runs, I'd say this ridge runs roughly southeast to northwest. Wouldn't you think, Tim? Roughly?
Yeah, that seems about right.
About right, yeah. If you think of this mountain and Center Point Knob as a T, this would be the vertical part of the T, and Center Point Knob is horizontal. So this kind of runs into Center Point Knob, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if you're standing here, I'm going to be quiet for a moment. You can hear the trains. You could hear the cars from the road. You can hear things from the valley. Okay? And that's because the wind is blowing to the mountain right now. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So you can
Yeah,
hear
I don't know if the recording's picking up the trains, but we can hear the trains in the back.
Yep, and you can hear the road, because I do believe it's a turnpike. Well, you got Route 11 up there, the Carlisle Pike. So there's a lot of traffic, and you can just kind of hear that. And like I said, the trains run pretty regularly through the valley. There's a train tracks down there, and I've heard them, from up here. And that day I heard, some noises, but like I said, the wind was basically coming from that valley and going down into that one, if that's important or not.
So the wind was basically coming across the trail.
Yes, it was going from the other valley that's on the other side of the ridge, which is, I would say, south, blowing up over the ridge and down into the valley where the Yellow Breeches flows. And that valley on the south side of the ridge, there ain't nothing down there. That's just woods. That's just like a valley between the mountain where Camp Tuckahoe is and this mountain, which I actually don't know the name of this mountain. I just call it White Rocks for obvious reason. Here's my opinion on this, okay? I've had a lot of supernatural things happen to me, but they would be more along the lines of what you would call ghosts, other ethereal beings, whatever you want to call them. And growing up, I did like cryptids. What kid doesn't? My kid loves Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, or whatever you want to call them. Do I believe that there's something there? Something is out there. People are seeing something, or something is happening. Do I believe it's a flesh and blood animal? Personally, I don't know.
It's hard. That's a hard leap to make.
And here's the hard leap, and here's why I say this. And this is because of being an experienced woodsman. Being a guy who goes out and it can make himself comfortable out here with just axe, knife, and saw. Okay. For something that large, and this goes back to what I said earlier, and to be as intelligent as it's supposed to be, it would have to take in a lot of food.
A lot of calories.
A lot of calories.
A lot of
And
calories.
like I said earlier, this game of survival, when you talk about wilderness survival and all that, people are like, oh, well, if the crap hits the fan, I'm going to go out and live off the land. It's a lot harder than what you think.
Oh, yeah.
You have to know what you're doing. It's all about caloric intake.
Big-brained primates, and that's what it would have to be, according to all descriptions.
You need a lot of food.
We need to fuel our brain. We need a lot of food.
Looking around right here at this particular spot, okay, and it's just a small spot. Now, I know some foods. All right, I have some knowledge. I mean, you'd have fiddleheads there where the ferns are in the spring, and you got to think.
But you're not getting serious calories.
No, you're not. You're not. To get serious calories, you got to eat meat. Now, there's a lot of deer here. There's a crap ton of deer here because they can't be hunted in this area.
Right.
So there's a lot of deer here. There are turkeys here. But like right now, if I was out here right now, the only thing I think that would be even close to being edible right now, just looking, is, maybe you could get some sugars from the maple trees.
Yeah. No, the calorie thing is one of the biggest. See, where I am with this right now is I don't think it's much different than a ghost. I mean, it has a more physical presence at times, like at least footprints. But in the old days, the way they used to ghost hunt is they put powder on the floor and they wait for footprints to come into powder. So how different is it, really?
Yeah.
Did you hear something?
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm hoping the audio picked it up. Anyways.
What'd you hear?
Just a small call, but it could have been a bird.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to tell. It was real quick when you were talking, and I wasn't trying to ignore you.
No, it's fine. No, I have a big problem believing it's a natural creature, especially on the East Coast. When you get out to Seattle, or Washington State, where they have just vast regions of forest, maybe out there, even there, I'm having trouble believing something that big is just going undiscovered.
If it was a flesh and blood creature, and now I'm really pushing it. Now I'm jumping out of the box here. It would have to be something that moved up and down the East Coast.
Well, and for it to be on the East Coast.
For it to be on the East Coast. It would have to be something that moves with the plants that are available.
Constantly, and the problem with that is I get reports all year long in York County. That's the thing that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have, you know, the difference between wilderness and woods, right? Wilderness is like untouched.
Wilderness is untouched. This is woods.
We don't have wilderness.
This has been touched by man.
Yeah.
Now, there are plants here that are edible, but during the summer, you know, during the winter, there's not a lot out there other than like maybe fish or something. Now, if there's trees, if there's pine trees, I don't know if you know, but white pine trees are edible. The bark is edible. That was a starvation food for the Native Americans.
Was it?
You can eat the inner Cambrian layer on a pine tree. If you take pine needles and make a tea out of it, it has more vitamin C in it than an orange. Me and my son
I know you could do it with
that all the time.
We used to make the Indian lemonade out of the staghorn sumac.
Okay. You can also make Indian lemonade out of wood sorrel or sheep sorrel. That was a woodpecker.
Yeah,
there.
that's a woodpecker for sure.
Did hear a crow further down the mountain, but this just gives you an idea of how the sounds carry up here.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the air is now still. There's no movement of air anywhere. So, do I believe it's a flesh and blood creature? Do I believe in cryptids? I believe it's something. Cryptids are probably, I'm thinking, physical manifestations of something else.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of right there.
And I think that's because and it's not because, you know, believe me, I'm not a guy that does research on Bigfoot. I'm not a Bigfoot researcher. I'm not there. I'm just a common woodsman who's seen a lot as far as like some supernatural things that actually had nothing to do with the woods. You know, they're completely separate from that. And just based on what I know, for a creature that large, it would have to be eating constantly.
Yep.
All the time.
Yep.
And just the amount of people that are in the forest on the East Coast, the odds of not finding a body, and I don't even know what the opinion is on most people that believe that
you get excuses is what you get.
Right, that Sasquatches are physical beings. The fact that you don't find a body just blows my mind.
Oh, they'll say, how often do you find a bear corpse in the woods? That's what they'll say.
Honestly, I found a bear corpse in the woods. I found bones in the woods.
It's rare, but it happens.
It happens, and
but
you know,
it never happens with one of these things.
And you know, honestly, you know, corpses and bones and stuff are scattered by other animals. That's not an untruth. Okay, now this formation here, which is probably close to the last formation, because we're nearing the end of the trail. This is important, and I will tell you why a little bit. Okay. So we're looking at a formation that's probably 10 feet, 8 feet tall.
Yeah, 10.
Okay.
Something like that. And this is it's similar to the much smaller. It's a big boulder.
And it's just a giant white rock, you know, quartzite boulder is what it is. Okay, so now we're nearing time-wise that day. We were nearing close to lunchtime. About here, a little further out, where there is no boulders, is where we ran into the other hikers.
Okay. So they're heading in the opposite direction.
Yes, they are heading back to the parking area. And I know that they weren't parked there because when we parked, we were the only vehicle in the parking area. So and I even stopped and talked to these guys, and they told me they were parked in the Boiling Springs parking lot.
Okay.
Because the Appalachian Trail passes through the town of Boiling Springs. And then we come to this, basically it's a hill with no rock formations on it.
Yeah, hiking's much easier now. I'll take that
Yes. About here is where we ran into them, where there was no formations. So we're talking close to lunchtime. It was about noonish. More like 11ish, I'd say. And we had, moved pretty good through those rocks. I mean, me and my friend that day really, we did a good clip. I mean, I could move pretty easily through them, and he wasn't as burdened as I was, because I didn't have this pack, but I had a smaller a day pack, and I still had my hatchet with me, and of course I had my bushcraft knife with me and all that stuff. I didn't have a saw, but I always carry at least something with me, because you just never know. Another hiker coming. I saw the movement. So it just goes to show you have good linear sight lines here, because there is no, I mean, there's some trees and undergrowth, but you have good linear sight lines here. And like I said, early spring, it was nowhere near this grown up. Nowhere near this grown up.
If we talk about, like, even down to what you experienced that day.
Yeah.
Now, your friend did see something.
Yes.
But a lot of these encounters people had, and the one I was talking about where I had that fear response, I didn't see anything. I heard some stuff, and I smelled something bad. At some point in there, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I got so scared. I was leaning on this stick with all my weight, because my knees were like locked up. I wanted to run.
That's exactly what I felt.
I wanted to run so bad.
I know exactly how you feel.
And
I knew it.
I couldn't run, because I was just like, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I've read enough Bigfoot reports at this point to be like, I'm going to see Bigfoot. Like, that's what's happening here. And I never saw anything. But I'm there, and I'm just like, kind of like trying to steel myself.
Waiting.
Like, this is what you wanted, buddy. Like, kind of like being.
You asked
like,
for it, here I come.
Like, man up and deal with this. And then I heard what sounded like metal gears clicking. Click, click, click. Not loud. Click, click, click. And then, in an instant, everything was gone. The smell was gone. The fear was gone.
That's crazy.
I was able to hang out at that area for a little bit. As I was walking out across the trail, I came up. Like I said, there was a real thin coating of snow, and there were foot-shaped prints that came out of the woods, and I didn't see toes in them, but they were big. They were big and looked. I didn't see them on the way up, but I wasn't looking for them either. I might have walked right over them. I don't know on the way up,
right.
But they were there. But I never saw anything, and that's the most frightened I've ever been. When that raccoon came at me, I wasn't scared. I wasn't happy about it.
No, you knew you had to deal with it.
I had to do what I had to do.
Well, the feeling you just described, that's exactly what I felt when I heard this noise down
that day.
That
day we were here.
Yeah. Now we're getting ahead of where I wanted to be. That's okay, we'll just go ahead.
The point I was getting to, though, is these are all things, when you don't see a creature associated with it, if all that happened in a house, people would say poltergeist.
Correct.
But because we're outside, everyone says Bigfoot. And a good friend of mine pointed that out to me. He said, Tim, if everything you described, if that happened inside a house, they would just say poltergeist. And that kind of changed the whole way I thought about the whole thing. Because I thought, up until that point, I thought, oh yeah, maybe it was a Bigfoot. And now I'm like, well, maybe it was something completely different, I don't have any proof that it was anything,
Right, and here's the thing. If these things exist, how did they manifest before there were houses?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now,
Speaking of poltergeist.
I think that's, yeah.
So are we basically same elevation here, or we going up?
We're slowly working up.
Okay.
Slowly. Just up, down, up, down.
But I mean, generally though, we're heading like up the mountain.
Yeah. So we're here on this trail. We're getting towards the end. My buddy's like, we're tired, because we hoofed it pretty good. And he saw about how far back was where that other rock that I pointed out to you was, correct?
Yeah, that last boulder,
yes,
kind of, yeah.
Last boulder. Mm-hmm. So if we're still thinking about this as a T, we were kind of where the two lines join. Where the vertical and horizontal come together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a crook right there in the mountain. If that makes any sense.
Yep.
This is now officially the end of White Rock Trail. Now you're on the Appalachian Trail proper, which is up here. So this is the old halfway point. Right here. gonna eat some food here. Drop my pack.
Let's do that.
It's typically what I do. We got here, I would say, around noon, 12:30 to 1. That's when we got here. Would have been here earlier, but because of the debacle with the tree,
Right.
we were behind schedule. This used to be the halfway mark, so people would be like, "Woohoo, I'm halfway!" Or you want to cheer. I think that's one reason why they rerouted. They rerouted the AT. You know what's that road down south? It's a Great Smoky Mountain.
Yeah.
That actually runs on parts of the AT, the old AT, the original. That day felt different than all the other days from the get-go, if that makes sense.
It does.
There was a strange feeling just from the moment we pulled in. And it wasn't like a feeling of foreboding or anything. It was just like, it really feels odd out here today. So by this point, we're sitting here at Center Point Knob and we're having lunch.
You guys go much past this, or
No. We went up, where I showed you the...
Mhm.
There's a box there, because where that box represents is where the Cumberland Valley, because how the AT works is it's actually a federal park, but it's run by volunteers. So the Cumberland Valley Appalachian Trail Club takes over from there on, down through to Blue Mountain. So the AT runs 17 miles across the Cumberland Valley to Blue Mountain. And eventually down over the edge, through Duncannon, across Harrisburg. Then you get up into state game land, Peters Mountain, state game lands and all that. 211, which is another animal all to itself.
Man, we got a nice breeze up here now.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful area. It really is.
It really is. It's gorgeous up here.
I thought you would like it here.
Yeah.
So you tell me when you're ready and we'll head out.
All right. Yeah. So we stopped for a little bite and drink.
Yep.
At
Center Point Knob.
Center Point Knob.
The old halfway point of the Appalachian Trail.
And that's all the further you guys came that day. Well, I mean, you said you went up to the.
We went up to the signs.
But
and
basically.
20 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where we came. We came and we had lunch, and we started back down on White Rocks Trail back to the car. And the whole time we were here, at this point, we never had any weird feelings, sense of dread, nothing.
Kind of forgot about what happened earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head. We completely forgot about it. I was leaving him alone because he was getting visibly upset at me.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. People don't get upset when if they see a bear and you ask them about it. They're not going to get upset.
Yeah,
about
he
it,
was tired of me asking him questions and bugging me. And now, like I said, as we were working along the ridge, I was looking for stuff, and I never saw or heard anything else.
So you guys ate lunch and you're making your way back.
Yep, we started down the hill here. So we're technically on the AT, and we're heading southbound. And we're heading down the hill to where White Rocks Trail starts. Now, what I showed you earlier about the sight line, and we're going to look up when we get down to where the fire ring is.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to see that you really can't see that hilltop, and that's important. And between here, it's just scrub and trees, nothing major. The Boiling Springs is 3.2 miles to civilization.
Okay.
Okay, Center Point Knob is up there, and Boiling Springs is up the hill and down. Okay, so we're starting to get on the vertical part of the T, as I call it. And then, of course, Coon Road is 1.4 miles, which is where we
came up.
Yeah.
Okay.
We will return to Chad's story in a bit, but I wanted to take this little break and thank our patrons. Thank you very much for everything you do. Without our patrons, we could not do Strange Familiars, so thank you very, very much. If you'd like to help us continue to make Strange Familiars and get extra content besides, please consider becoming a patron at Patreon. That's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. $3 a month gets you an extra episode of Strange Familiars, at least. We guarantee one full extra episode every month. Often we deliver more than that, sometimes 2 or 3 extra episodes, but we guarantee at least 1 full extra episode. There are other levels of support there as well for things like stickers, t-shirts, pins, and more. Go ahead and check it out at patreon.com/strangefamiliars. If you don't like the idea of a monthly subscription, we have a paypal.me link in the show notes at strangefamiliars.com. You can always make a one-time PayPal donation, and that helps a great deal as well. Another way to help us out is to give us nice 5-star reviews wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you subscribe everywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you're listening to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe and share the podcast on social media. And now let's get back to Chad's story. At this point in the day, Chad and I had descended into a sort of bowl area that was off of the trail. It's an area where he heard the roars that he will describe later coming from. It's a very interesting and creepy area. We explored some possible tree structures and some odd bends and breaks down there. We definitely plan on returning and spending more time in that area as soon as we can. But if you hear us refer to the bowl or the area we were just in the next segment of the story, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that area off the trail where we found the tree breaks and bends and so forth. We even found some sort of footprint there, which was maybe a back footprint of a bear. We're not sure. Let's return to White Rocks Trail and the rest of Chad's story.
So if you take point of where we just were with that game trail, it was about there. Okay. We just left center point now. We're on this little hump. There's a game trail here. I'm guessing it goes down into that area.
Yep, might be the other one we saw cut off in that direction.
Absolutely. We drop down this little hump. And we got just to this first formation. And I remember this clear as freaking day. We were standing here, we're facing this direction. I'm in front, my friend's behind me when we heard that noise.
That
noise.
inhale or whatever.
That inhale, that howl roar is the best way to describe it. I'm getting the arm, hair standing on my arms remembering it.
Yeah, look at that.
And
it's a warm day, got goosebumps.
yeah, and we were and I heard it, and it was coming. I was facing east on the ridge. It was to my left, and it was down in that angle.
So right down where we were.
Right down where we were, where that hollow is. Now, I've never been down in that area till today, so I did not know what was there till we followed that game trail. But down in that hollow where the two mountains come together was down there. Stopped us dead, mid-conversation. I looked at my friend and I saw a look of abject horror and terror. He was terrified.
Wow.
And it was almost the same look as when he saw whatever animal, whatever you want to call it, earlier in the day. He was terrified. I swung around right away, and he's talking, and I'm telling him, be quiet. Was I scared? I would say I wasn't scared. I was just kind of like, what the heck was that?
Right.
The woods went silent. I mean, it was dead silent. And I'm listening, and I'm listening, and I'm listening. And my friend's like talking, and I finally told him, shut up. And I'm looking back at the ridge, and I'm trying to see, listen quietly, being as quiet as I can. And I just had this feeling of, I wouldn't say fear, but it's like, what the heck was that? And the whole, how would you say this? The whole climate had changed. And this was like, it was almost 1 o'clock. It was 12:30.
Yeah, so the middle of the day.
Middle of the day. And it was like this today. Sunny. The clouds had gone. The sun was out. And I never heard anything. And like I said, I have experience with different animals in Pennsylvania. I've heard all kinds of animals. Never heard that. It wasn't down in the valley. It was off to a slight angle. If I'm facing Center Point now, it just turned around now.
Right.
So it was on my right at an angle off the ridge down in the corner. The corner, like I say, if you think of these two mountains as a hill, it was the very corner
Where they meet.
where they meet.
Yeah.
And we're standing here, and he's like, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. And I'm like, no, I need to go find out what this is. Because I don't just bolt. You know, I'm like, I got to find out what this is. You know, I had a feeling in my brain, I need to go figure out what this is. You know, what was that? Let's go find out. And I still had a little bit of feeling of, you know, like, hey, let's just be real cautious, you know. So I started back. My friend was skitzing, and I said, look, stay here. I gave him my hatchet. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm going forward. And he's like, no, you can't do it. I said, no, I'll be fine. You know, it's okay. Because I'm not scared. I'm not scared of the woods. I'm more comfortable in the woods than I am a city. I hate cities.
I'm with you there.
I am scared of cities.
I call that the Blair Witch effect.
Yes.
I had a friend who's like, thought the Blair Witch was the scariest movie you ever saw because they were lost in the woods. It's like, they were right by a creek. All they had to do, in Maryland, all they had to do is keep the creek on the left.
And you'll find
and walk.
a house.
Yeah.
So, knowing that I know the area, I was like, I'm not afraid. So I started back, okay? And I got, I would say, let me count here. 10 footfalls. And I can still see the sight lines are pretty good here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking
across the ridge.
Across the ridge and down. I'm scanning both sides. My friend's probably back where we were, 10 footfalls, just standing there when I heard it again. And this time it was louder and it had changed position. This time it came directly from Center Point Knob.
Oh, so it came up?
It came up.
From where it was?
It came up the hill.
Now, do you think it was at the knob, or you think it just came from that direction?
It might have been at the knob. It might have been where the fire ring was.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you know how the hill runs.
Right.
It was very close. And you can hear people's voices as they come up the
exactly.
trail.
That's what I've been listening, hearing people talk, and
whatever it was so loud. It was louder than any natural noise I've ever heard before. Lion roars. It was loud. It shook the woods. And, the wind was blowing down the mountain, so it wasn't anything from the valley. And it was so loud, so jarring. It literally, it was as if you'd been blowed, like if somebody hit you.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of stunned me for a second. And I was like, what the? And after the howl, after I got stunned, I had a feeling of, I need to leave. Whatever made that noise.
So curiosity was gone.
Curiosity was gone.
At this point.
And it wasn't even curiosity. It wasn't like a feeling that I had. I actually had like a wave of malevolence. That's the best way to describe it.
Wow.
Coming from that direction, down this ridge towards me, saying, you need to go now. I don't want you here. You need to leave now. And that's the exact feeling I had. It was literally as if I was, right after that sound, I had a second where I was stunned. And then, part of me was like, what is that? And then before I even got into that curiosity mode again, because I actually took one more step forward, I felt a wave of, you need to leave. Something doesn't want you here. You are not welcome here at this moment. And I looked at my friend and I said, we need to go now. And then he was kind of like, what? He's like, he was stunned. He's like, what was that? His eyes were like golf balls. And I said, we need to go now. He's like, well, don't you? And I said, I don't care right now. Let's just go. We need to leave. We don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how I felt. We don't belong here.
Wow.
You aren't wanted here.
Huh.
And it was malevolent. It was absolutely malevolent. So, we started back up the trail. And I said, we need to go fast, but carefully. Because, you just traversed that trail. You ain't running down there.
No, that's what I was going to ask. You got to watch your feet.
Yes. And I said, let's go quickly. Watch your step. Keep your brain on and just keep moving. Don't stop. Whole time I had my my hatchet out, and I'm just like moving and looking over my shoulder because I fully expected something to come from that direction. What it was, I don't know. I don't know what it was.
Right. Well, you didn't see it.
You know, no rocks were thrown. No, you know.
No bad smell.
No bad smell. And if there was a smell, I couldn't smell it anyways because the wind was blowing away from me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Wind was going down the mountain, so it was coming up over the ridge and down.
Yeah, across the trail.
Yep.
So.
Almost in the way it's going now. See, it's changed direction now, or it's the way it's been going all day long. See, it's coming out of that other valley and down in the other valley.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was something down there that had a smell or whatever you want to call it, I wouldn't have smelled it. I just heard that horrendous noise, and that's not an exaggeration. It was horrendous, loud, shook the woods, you know, and it was close.
Wow.
And it had changed position quickly. Whatever time it took for us to kind of argue, and then I took 10 steps, it changed. Now, did I hear something moving through the woods down there or up on there? No, but I don't think it would have.
Because you were talking.
Because we were talking, and then after I silenced him, I moved forward. And whatever made that noise didn't make the noise until I moved forward. And I think if there was something and it saw me, it was just out of my eyesight, in the line of sight, and saw me.
Right.
I don't think it was a person fooling around, because it was, the first one I heard was loud too. It was deafening. You know, not deafening, but it was definitely loud. It was louder than what a person could holler. It wasn't a howl in the classic sense. It was how it was deep, low. And like I said, if you think of it as a picture, you had that coarse sound that was really loud, and at the end it was haggard, ragged, like somebody or something was just trying to get it out as loud as it could.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it wasn't a person, because no person could make this sound, and it was so loud it reverbed off the trees, reverbed down in the valley, and it stunned me for a second. You know, and I'm not a guy that's like afraid of stuff, you know. You know, but it affected me. Whatever it was, it affected me to this day.
Wow. And
I've come up to this trail several times.
Yeah, but that's the other thing. Like, you've been here since several times.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not afraid to come here.
Alone.
Yeah. I was here in March, alone, in the snow, and there was nobody. And I saw no tracks other than animals. But I'm not afraid of this area. I know this area. You know, this is one of my stomping grounds, and my haunts, as, you know, I call it. But I knew I had to leave then.
How soon after this experience did you come back here again?
Probably within a month.
Really?
Yeah. Honestly, I did. Now, my friend never came back again. And we'll go into that in detail later. But yeah, he was done. You know, he looked at me, and, you know, after we heard the second noise, which was closer, louder, shattered, you know, almost like shattered the world is the best way you could describe it. I mean, it was just, I don't know if you've ever been near, and this is the best way I can even come close to describing it. It used to be in Spring Grove, the paper mill, you'd have that steam whistle go off to change shift. Starts up loud, I mean loud, and then it ebbs off.
Yeah.
It was like that. It was as if you were standing beside that steam whistle.
Wow.
And it went off. It was that loud.
Wow.
That intense. I mean, I didn't have to cover my ears because it wasn't a high-pitched noise. It was very deep, very loud. And I know deeper noises carry further than what high-pitched noises were. Feeling was, you need to leave now. And it wasn't something in my brain. It literally was like something, like a feeling emanating from that section of the ridge then.
Wow.
After that. It was almost like a wave of malevolence.
Right. So it's like, not like you heard those words in your head, but you got that feeling.
I got that feeling, and then in my head, I'm like thinking right away, you need to leave now. And that was the exact word, now. Not later, now. And, you know, so we shot back down the trail. We didn't run, because, you know.
You can't here.
You can't. You know, it wasn't like fear. It was more like, go, because you're not wanted here. You know, something hates you. That's the best way to describe it. Is if you ever been driven out by a person, they're like, get out of here, and then you feel that hate. That's what I felt. It's like, I need to leave, because if I don't, something bad is going to happen. And that was the best way to describe it. It wasn't fear. It was more like, you need to leave because something bad is going to happen. So, anyhow, let's continue on down the trail here.
So we're at this is
boulder.
This 8-10 foot tall
White rock formation. It's another boulder, typical of what's here. So, and here's why it had significance. So me and my friend were working quickly along the ridge, Safely and quickly is the best way to describe it. And we were coming here, and we were at this boulder, and we heard a noise above us. And here were the two gentlemen that we had passed earlier.
The guys who came off the AT.
Yes, and they were up here at the top of the rock, and they were sitting there having lunch. And they were like, "Hey, what's wrong?" And my friend didn't answer him. He was ready to get out of here. He actually kept going, and I stopped, and I said to him, "Did you guys hear that noise?" And then one guy laughed, and he joked. He goes, "Yeah, I heard that." He said, "I heard it twice. I heard it both times." He goes, "I joked to my friend here that, that was you, making a Sasquatch noise or something. We said, yeah, we heard Bigfoot." And I looked at them and I said, "I did not make that noise." And they could tell by the look on my face that I was dead serious. And I said, "I don't know what it was, but I'm not staying around to find out." I said, we need to go. And these guys looked at me and they looked at each other, and the one guy said, "Do you think we should leave too?" And the one guy goes, "Yeah, we need to leave." So my demeanor completely changed their joking demeanor.
Right.
So that's how serious I was. And they were like, "Yeah, we need to go." And I said to them real quickly, I said, "Where are you guys parked?" They said, "Boiling Springs." I said, "Well, that's back in that area."
Yeah, so they would have had to walk back to the direction of the scream.
Yes.
Or howl.
Whatever
Roar.
you want to call that sound.
Roar.
Scream, howl, roar, whatever. But the one guy said, "I'm not going back that way." And I said, "Look, you guys, where are you guys parked?" They said, "Boiling Springs." I said, "Come with us. I'll take you back to Boiling Springs. It's not that far away, on the road. I'll drive you down." They said, all right, great. He's like, "We got to get off this rock." And like I said, the rock's probably 8 feet, close to 10 feet tall. They're like, "We got to get down." And I said, "Well, I'm going to head down a while." And my friend at this point had just kept going, was out of eyesight, but I could still hear him working along the rocks. And I said, I'll meet you down there. I got to catch up with him. He's pretty shook up." And they said, "Okay, we're coming. Go ahead, we're coming." He goes, and one guy's like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't want to go back that way." He goes, "He's serious. He's not joking." So they got down the rock, and we continued along the ridge, and we got back down, went down the ridge.
Just retrace your steps.
Retrace our steps, because this is an out and back trail. It's 1.5 miles out one way, and then 1.5 miles back, so it's about 3 miles total. And we got back down in the car. We waited. These guys must have really got off this rock really quick, because they were only less than 5 minutes behind us. And we left. We left.
Now, when you were coming back across the ridge, before or after you saw the other hikers, did you hear anything behind you?
No.
Didn't hear any footsteps or
footsteps.
Nothing.
No, nothing. I was continuously looking back. I would stop and listen once in a while, tell my friend to keep going, because I wanted to keep him in eyesight.
Right.
Because I brought him out here. I was responsible for him. I had to pack. He was unencumbered, so he could move a lot faster than me.
Mm-hmm.
I had my hatch out the whole time. Maybe I was overreacting.
Well, you don't know.
You don't know. And I didn't know what it was. And was I going to go back and try and find that out? What this thing was that day? No, because like I said, I had the feeling that I didn't belong there at that particular spot at that particular time.
Right.
That was the feeling I got from, it wasn't a feeling that I had, that was the external feeling that I got from whatever was there. And when I heard the second noise, howl, roar, whatever, from that area, I didn't see anything, and I didn't hear anything after that. And when it had moved, I didn't hear anything as it was moving.
Mm-hmm.
And as we discussed before, from where we had heard it the first time, which just sprung my curiosity and didn't make me alert me in any way, it could have moved without making any noise. Because of the way, we were down in that area, and it just shows, we were far enough you couldn't hear anything, and if something is moving stealthily, you wouldn't have heard it. But it moved pretty quick up that hillside.
Yeah, so you took 10 steps, basically. Well, you had a little conversation, you said. And
yes.
You took 10 steps. Yeah, so it had to come up that hill, which is, I mean, it's not super steep, but it winded me coming up there. Now, would you say it was the proximity of the second roar? Was it the proximity that made you decide to turn around and go, or was it that actual, like that feeling in the air or whatever? However
it was the feeling, because like I said, I'm not scared out here,
mm-hmm.
and I've tried to see like bears. I'm not scared of bears. I've surprised bears at a distance, heard them running, and and hurried up the trail to see what's ahead. I'm not scared of strange noises.
Right.
I'm not, and. No, not saying like I'm this brave, crazy guy or anything. No, stuff like that doesn't scare me.
We've retraced our steps, which were the same steps you made that day.
Yes.
And at this point, we're back to the stump that was hit by lightning.
Yeah, the burned stump.
The tree.
I started this whole day of weirdness.
Yeah. You were talking a little bit about your friend. We're run out of battery and out of space on the recorder, so we couldn't leave the recorder running.
Yeah.
And said he wasn't too happy about the whole experience.
No, he never came out with me again. he said I don't know what you're doing out there. He says, but that's not for me. And I said, dude, we just hiked. He said, yeah, but I've never experienced anything. And this is a guy has been hunting
mm-hmm.
and stuff. He said, no, I'm never going up there again. He said, he's like, I'm sorry, Chad. He goes, I'm just that's not what I want to do. And he's like, I just really don't want to hike anymore. But I could tell that he was spooked.
Yeah.
So,
well, that might do it.
Yeah, that will do it. And then, after we had encountered those other gentlemen, we came down the mountain quickly. Quickly and safely was the best way to say it. And the other two guys were only probably about 5 minutes behind us. They must have really got off that boulder really fast. And to end the story, we got back to the car. We were relieved. Automatically we saw the car. We're like, yay! And we loaded up in the car, and I took those two guys back to their car. And they thanked me, which was back in Boiling Springs, because they weren't hiking back through that way.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "Hey, man, thanks," and all this stuff.
So, when you came out, you and your friend, and then the other two guys followed you out of here.
Yeah.
Did they talk about it at all? Did you talk about it at all in the car, either with your friend or them, on the drive?
Well, my friend, we did a little bit. And the two guys that we were giving a lift to, back to their car, were like, they had said they had never heard anything like that before. And they thought I was messing around.
Mm-hmm.
And the one guy, and I said to the one guy who was the dude that refused to go back that way,
mm-hmm.
I said to him, well, why did you believe me that it wasn't me? And he said, well, it was the look on your face and your tone. He goes, I said, "Did I look scared?" He's like, well, your buddy looked terrified. He goes, you looked like you were concerned for us. And one reason I asked them if they heard that is I wanted to validate.
Right.
Validation.
Right.
That it wasn't just something in my mind.
Right.
And those two guys had heard it also. So that validated it, that it did exist, that it wasn't just something that I heard,
mm-hmm.
or misconstrued.
Right.
And the fact that you saw the distance we traveled, the fact that they heard it that far away from where we heard it the second time, they heard both times, but they said the second time was much louder. And the fact that they heard it from that far away just goes to show you the intensity of what we heard.
Yeah.
And
they heard it both times.
They said the fact that you seemed more concerned for us, that made us realize that you weren't messing around, and that was something that we shouldn't mess with either. He goes, and at first we were joking, I hear there's Bigfoot. They said after they saw my buddy come through, and I said, did you hear that? They said they realized it was time to go also.
Yeah.
I said, did you guys feel afraid? They said, no, we were just, we weren't so much afraid. We were just like, okay, I think it's a good idea also that we leave.
Mm-hmm.
And and the other guy was like, yeah, I wasn't going back that way, just from what I heard and just the fact, the look on your face. And he goes, and you were pretty well prepared for whatever was going to be out there. So So yes, we did discuss it a little bit, and of course my friend was like, I'm never going there again.
Yeah.
And then when I went back about a month to 3 weeks later, somewhere in there, I asked if he wanted to come along. He said, no way.
No way.
He's like, I'm never going back to that mountain.
That's sometimes that's the way people, they're done. And sometimes they're done with the woods in general.
He was done. Now, did he hunt before? Maybe, but it was always where he hunted was always within sight of the road, you know,
Right.
because he would park his car and go in a little bit with a tree stand,
Right.
and areas that he knew, but he would never go and search for another area with me ever again. I went home, dropped him off. I went home. So I started listening. You know, I'm still curious, you know, because like I told you before, I'm one of these people that want to know what I experienced. You know, and I always try and take things in a logical way. So the first thing I started doing was listening to recordings on YouTube of every animal I could think of. And I'm talking every animal that's native to Pennsylvania and North America. You know, elk screams, you know, wolf howls, coyote howls, fox screams, cougar screams, you know, because you got that whole thing, you know, scream, you know, there might be cougars in PA, I don't know. But that's another story.
I do.
Yeah.
It's all in Maryland. I know if they're in Maryland, they're in
I
Pennsylvania.
believe it. I believe they're here. But, you know, catamount or cougar screams, you know, and nothing sounded like this creature. Or whatever it was, creature. I don't even know what it is to this day. Creature, whatever you want to call it. This thing. And I was curious, and I was like, okay, you know, skeptical. Let's just listen to Bigfoot or Sasquatch noises. And I was listening through them, and I'd say after about the fifth one, and I'm going to have to send you the link to it, you know, to find it if it's still there. You know, this was 5 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And the hair stood up on the back, on my arms again. And I just was like, wow, that's what I heard. So one of the sounds that somebody had recorded, and like I said, I don't remember where, I'll have to find it again.
Sure.
Was exactly what I heard, you know, almost to the T. I mean, it was different slightly, but, you know, had the same kind of, you know, obviously it wasn't as intense, but, you know, the same duration of sound and same intense, you know, sound, you know, that deep howl, growl, whatever you want to call it. You know, I did a little more research, and like I am, you know, I'm not a guy that I would consider a believer. You know, I've experienced some supernatural things, you know, you could call it paranormal, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, but they are always of the, you know, ghost or spirit type variety. Nothing like this. And like I said before, I know the woods. I know this area. I know what's here, or thought I knew what was here. And it was beyond the kin of what I knew. So I'm not somebody who goes out looking for things like this.
Right, sure.
So I did a little more research, and, you know, I've never heard of, you know, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania or anything, or even thought about it. So I just did a research, you know, Google Bigfoot in Cumberland County, and came across this website, and these guys had Bigfoot encounters listed by county. So I clicked on.
Yeah, it's the old Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. They're now Keystone Bigfoot.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So, which I haven't been there since, other than earlier this week, because I was just double checking, because I told you about this before. So I went on there, hit Cumberland County, and I would say probably one of those, back in 2012, there were a group of teens camping in the Boiling Springs area, which is about where we are. And I'm assuming they were near the AT or here.
Not too many other places to camp.
No, there isn't. And especially in Cumberland Valley, you have to camp down by the railroad tracks. That's required. So I'm assuming they were up here. And they heard a noise beside their campsite, which alerted them. Then they heard another noise on the mountain above them, answering. And this happened, I'd have to look at it again, but it was in 2012, and it might have been in April or August, I think, which is pretty close to the time when I had my encounter, you know, 2 years later.
Yeah.
So that just blew my mind. So
Never saw anything, or never heard anything else like that?
no,
Ever?
and I've come up here numerous times. I come here all the time. I came up probably, I'd say, a month later, if not 3 weeks later. And I was specifically looking for something, and I wandered the area like I always do, and never found anything. And I never had that same feeling up here again. I mean, we came up here today, and I'm totally comfortable up here.
Yeah. Oh, it's nothing
bad.
Yeah.
And, it just blew my mind, and I haven't had that feeling in the woods again of total malevolence of, you need to leave now.
Wow.
That's what blew my mind. That's what really, to this day, affects me. When I talk about this stuff and I get a little weirded out, I guess you could say, or I think about it, my hair stands on end because I've never felt that feeling before and haven't since then.
Yeah.
And malevolence is the best way to describe it.
Wow, that's intense.
It was you need to leave now. It wasn't,
Well, I like your description too, because you're like, at first you're interested and you walk towards it, and then you're like, nope. After the second one, you're like, nope, no longer interested.
And it wasn't like, I was scared the second time. It was like, and it wasn't like it was in my brain I had this feeling. It was literally, I felt that feeling coming from that.
Wow.
It was like a wave, almost like a wind. It wasn't really a physical wind, but it was like an emotion of like, as if somebody is chasing you and you see them and they're like, you need to, and they're yelling at you. Nobody yelled other than that noise. And it was just like, I had this feeling of something telling me, you need to go. I don't want you here. You need to leave now. And then the feeling was, if I didn't leave, something bad was going to happen. What? I don't know.
Wow.
What? And then when I left, which was quickly, it wasn't like fear. It was like, I need to leave because something bad is going to happen. And like I said, I had that word now. That's what was in my voice, or in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now. You need to leave now.
Wow.
Don't want you here. You don't belong here at this point. And
so, I mean, to reiterate,
yeah,
this is someone who's comfortable in the woods. This is someone who still hikes regularly,
camp regularly,
by
all
yourself,
weather, solo hike into some really hairy, dangerous spots.
Yeah. So that's pretty wild. Well, Chad, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for coming in, experiencing and checking this place out.
Oh yeah, anytime.
Much appreciated.
So at some point in our conversation, Chad stopped talking and I asked him if he had heard something. I'll play that clip here. That was earlier in the conversation.
Into powder. So how different is it, really?
Yeah.
Did you hear something?
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm hoping the audio picked it up.
I don't know if you caught that sound, so I'll play it again. Listen directly after Chad says yeah the first time.
Into powder. So how different is it, really?
Yeah.
Did you hear something?
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm hoping the audio picked it up.
So later, Chad said what he had been hearing was something like a low guttural grunt while I was talking. I played him this clip, and he said he thinks I might have just caught the end of whatever he was hearing. So I'll play the isolated sound 3 times with the level boosted a little bit. Now what I found really interesting was comparing this sound to another sound I recorded at Pond Bank during the Michaud Roar episode. This sound was in the background of the recording while Jeff and I were talking at Pond Bank, and this small clip is the only section of the interview I could catch a piece of what I called the Pond Bank groan when we weren't talking. So I'll play that 3 times here. And now I'll play them together. First the White Rock sound, then the Pond Bank groan 3 times. So they are not exactly the same thing, but they are somewhat similar. Similar enough to be interesting to me, anyway. And what's also interesting to me is the context of both conversations. So at Pond Bank, Jeff and I were discussing the White Lady spirit and the connection between Bigfoot and these women in white entities. While on the White Rocks Trail on Sunday, Chad and I were discussing how Bigfoot in many ways is very much like a ghost. Just a reminder, if you want to contact us with your story, email strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to take us to a place you're sighting, like Chad did, I absolutely love doing these on-site episodes. If I can get there, I will absolutely go with you to the location of your experience. You can always find us at strangefamiliars.com. Hope to see some of you at the Metaphysical and Paranormal Expo in Gettysburg this weekend. And we will return next week with another episode of Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts, music, books, art, podcasts, and more. darkhollerarts.com. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. Go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com for more. And we are on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars. You can also join the Strange Familiars Gathering group on Facebook. Turn your head and smiled at me.